In our interconnected world, distant conflicts send shockwaves across continents. Today, June 24th, 2025, we face three critical flashpoints: Iran versus Israel, China versus Taiwan, and Russia versus Ukraine. These aren't isolated disputes. They're tangled webs of history, ambition, and fear threatening global stability. Iran and Israel's rivalry, China's claim over Taiwan, and Russia's war on Ukraine each have deep roots and global consequences. These conflicts test alliances, challenge international institutions, and force us to confront the limits of intervention and neutrality. Their outcomes will shape global trade, energy, technology, and the balance of power for years to come. In this video, we'll break down the origins, recent escalations, and global impact of each conflict. Ultimately, we'll consider what it will take to avoid catastrophe in a world where a single spark can ignite a global fire. Once allies, Iran and Israel are now bitter enemies, their relationship transformed by the 1979 Iranian Revolution. Iran's new regime branded Israel an illegitimate outpost of Western power, fueling decades of proxy warfare across the Middle East. Iran backs groups like Hezbollah and Hamas, aiming to encircle Israel and keep it under constant threat. Israel, in turn, has waged a shadow war, striking Iranian targets, sabotaging nuclear facilities, and assassinating key figures. In late 2024, this shadow war erupted into direct conflict. Iran launched its first-ever missile barrage at Israel, shattering old taboos. International diplomacy barely contained the escalation, but both sides are now more willing to cross red lines. The region remains on edge, with a fragile ceasefire masking deep, unresolved hostilities. The next miscalculation could trigger a catastrophic war neither side truly wants. Taiwan's story is one of contested identity and unfinished civil war. After the Chinese Civil War, the defeated nationalists retreated to Taiwan, while the communists established the People's Republic on the mainland. Beijing insists Taiwan is a breakaway province, vowing reunification, by force if necessary. But Taiwan has become a vibrant democracy, with most of its 23 million people identifying as Taiwanese, not Chinese. Under Xi Jinping, China has ramped up military pressure near daily air incursions, massive invasion drills, and aggressive rhetoric. The US supports Taiwan with arms and ambiguous promises, while allies like Japan and Australia warn against any change to the status quo. The world watches nervously, knowing a conflict here could draw in nuclear powers and cripple the global tech industry. For Taiwan, the threat is existential. For the world, it's a test of the rules-based order. The standoff is a powder keg. One misstep could have global consequences. The challenge deter war without provoking it. Russia and Ukraine share centuries of intertwined history, but Ukraine's 1991 independence marked a turning point. Russia saw Ukraine's westward shift as a threat, culminating in the 2014 annexation of Crimea and war in the Donbas. In 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion, expecting a quick victory. Instead, Ukraine's fierce resistance, backed by Western aid, turned the war into a grinding stalemate. Today, the front lines are static, cities are shattered, and millions are displaced. Russia occupies large swathes of territory, launching relentless strikes on Ukrainian infrastructure. The war is Europe's deadliest since 1945, a brutal reminder of the dangers of unchecked aggression. The outcome will shape Europe's security for generations. Behind every headline, the true cost of these conflicts is measured in human suffering. In Ukraine, cities lie in ruins, families are torn apart, and millions have fled, creating Europe's largest refugee crisis since World War II. In the Middle East, proxy wars and direct clashes have devastated communities in Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza, trapping civilians in cycles of violence and fear. In Taiwan, the threat of invasion hangs over daily life, fueling anxiety and debates about preparedness. These conflicts also fuel repression and division far beyond the front lines. In Russia, dissent is crushed, and a generation flees. In Iran, the regime uses external threats to justify crackdowns. Even in democracies, these wars spark fierce debates and social rifts. The human toll is paid in blood, fear, and lost futures. No conflict is isolated. Each sends shockwaves through the global system. Russia's war in Ukraine triggered spikes in food and energy prices, hitting the world's poorest hardest and forcing Europe to rethink its energy security. Tensions over Taiwan threaten the global supply of semiconductors, the backbone of modern technology. Nations are racing to secure supply chains and build new chip factories. But vulnerabilities remain. The return of great power rivalry has sparked a global arms buildup, with countries from Germany to Japan boosting military spending and innovation. Alliances are shifting. NATO is revitalized, the Quad and AUKUS are gaining prominence, and the Global South is asserting its independence. The old Cold War lines are gone. Today's world is more complex and unpredictable. Every flashpoint tests the resilience of the global order. The stakes are higher than ever. The world's response to these crises is a patchwork of diplomacy, sanctions, and military aid. The UN's power is limited, vetoes block action, and resolutions often lack teeth. NATO and the EU have united behind Ukraine, providing weapons, aid, and sanctions that have reshaped Europe's security landscape. In the Middle East, US diplomacy and military support for Israel are balanced by quiet Gulf Arab concerns about Iran. The Arab League calls for calm, but divisions run deep. Over Taiwan, the US and its allies focus on deterrence, arming Taipei, warning Beijing, and building coalitions to uphold international law. The goal: raise the cost of aggression and keep fragile peace intact. But the world's ability to prevent escalation remains uncertain. War isn't inevitable, peace is possible, but it demands relentless effort and compromise. For Ukraine, peace means sovereignty, security guarantees, and reconstruction without rewarding aggression. For Taiwan, it's about lowering tensions, maintaining dialogue, and deterring invasion while avoiding provocation. For Iran and Israel, only diplomacy and mutual restraint can prevent disaster. The world must recommit to international law, strengthen diplomacy, and recognize our shared fate. Peace is fragile and must be constantly defended. The alternative is a world consumed by chaos and suffering.